Welcome to Doomsday Happy Hour. I am your host, EJ Peters, and this is episode 3. You may have noticed my luscious long locks of hair. The long locks are soon not to be mine. I'm donating them to Locks of Love, which makes wigs for kids with cancer. I've actually been growing my hair out for probably about 8 months now, and I had wanted to be longer, but A, nobody's gonna see me other than the whole world who watches my show, which is probably 2 people. And B, it's time, because when you find a long hair in each of your kids' diapers, and the big one who's still just learning to talk says, "Mommy hair," when you find something here, or another piece of mommy hair, you know it's time. Now, how bad could this be? Well, let's just look for a moment at what I did to the big one, our son. I think you can tell from the picture by my side that I'm not a skilled hairstylist. Nope. Nobody should be paying me for this. And obviously, it's 10 zillion times harder to cut your own hair. So, I don't know how this is gonna go. I should mention that I got a couple tips from the guy who cuts my hair. He made me look beautiful, for example, for my wedding. And also, I printed out the instructions from Consumer Reports on how to cut your own hair. So what could go wrong? But before I try things out myself, because I'm not a big fan of me being a guinea pig, I thought, why not get some wigs and try and hone my hair cutting skills? Because, you know, between the couple tips that I got from my hairstylist and what Consumer Reports says, you know, and trying it out on a couple wigs, you know, like I said, how could this go wrong? Oh, I should watch a digital tutorial. Oops. Get good scissors. Well, at least I have that. Is it still a mullet if you trim the bangs too much? I wonder. Having a mirror this time might help. I think I'm going for a layered look. So I'm gonna just do that, and that. Okay, did the bangs. Oh, it says snip a little and the rest didn't print out. The good news is that I realized partway into ordering all these wigs that there was a pretty decent chance that I wasn't going to do such a great job. So I ought to get some backup wigs, should we say, to cover myself until my hair can grow back and it's safe to go out, which who knows, that could be 5 years from now. And then my hair can be fixed by a professional. Okay, so now I'm ready. And if things don't go well, I have this and others as my backup. Okay, so now that I've tried it on the wigs, this is the wig here. This is to separate the good hair that I'm gonna mail in. Consumer Reports says chimney bangs first. So I wanna mail in bangs in case they're gonna use them with the wigs, but I don't want it to be so short that I can't fix it with help or some like live tutorial. I'm gonna do my bangs first. I feel like I have more bangs than these, but, oh, I missed some. How bad could this possibly be? Well, okay. This should be at least 10 inches. So here we go. Incidentally, as I put bits of hair together, I'm noticing more gray. The last time I had gray strands available, I tried to save one to show my kids because I decided if when I go and get my hair cut, I asked the guy to trim out the grays. And if my kids are gonna pull my hair out, I might as well train them specifically to pull out the grays. So I may save the grays, or at least a couple of them for myself, for kid training purposes. Okay, and so here's some more. Fortunately, I'm never gonna see how bad this is because it's in the back. Probably horrible. I'm kind of loathing looking in the mirror, but we'll see. I may actually turn the camera myself and make this like a selfie, and that'll be my mirror. But in the meantime, the little girl's gonna get a whole lot of love and lots. So let me bundle it up for her. I know a lot of people are hurting in this time, and that donating the hair that I've been growing out for 8 months doesn't mean the same thing as a lot of other gestures now, because so many people are in so much need in so many different ways. But for some little girl, this might help bring home some hope, and that makes me feel good. And now, without further ado, the dreaded selfie, so I'm gonna see myself as you've already seen me. The dreaded selfie. I think I added like 10 years. I'm not sure if I took off 1 pound of hair and added 10 pounds of weight, but whatever. The good news is the guy who cuts my hair says that he can help me fix whatever I do wrong.
Welcome, Cat Renar, to Doomsday Happy Hour. Thank you so much for joining us. I should explain that I'm wearing this hat because I recently cut my hair, and you know how sometimes you leave the hairstylist and when you do your hair for the next couple weeks, it doesn't look quite right like when you left. Well, it wasn't a professional hairstylist and it doesn't look like it did the day I got the cut. So I'm trying different ideas to salvage my look a little bit in the meantime. But welcome, Kat. I want to go back for a moment to something Jacqueline Dolly mentioned in episode 2. She talked about evergreen skills that help people stay current. And also, though, she mentioned that there are professions, I believe she would call them evergreen professions, like construction, like the mechanics shop that she mentioned, where they're not going to be replaced by automation or AI, at least not anytime soon. And a lot of these are male dominated. And you chose to make a career move. You went from being a media buyer to a very evergreen profession that is male dominated. You're now a firefighter. And I was wondering if you could tell us, first of all, a little bit about your current role, what it took to make the cut, what do you do now, and what it's like to be in a profession that is so male dominated that you're probably, I don't know, what, 1 or 2%, part of a 1 or 2% part of the population?
That's true. Thanks, EJ. Thanks for having me. It's true that I changed careers midlife. It was one of those midlife crises that you hear about, usually attributed to men. But I was in advertising. I enjoyed it a lot, but I always felt like a square peg in a round hole. Mm-hmm. And so I had been doing volunteer work and delivering food to AIDS patients for about 2 hours a week. And one day I had this epiphany that I was getting more fulfillment out of the 2 hours a week than my 60 hours a week I was working as a media buyer. And I thought, well, something's wrong with this. And, you know, it was interesting, but I was kind of floating around middle management and I wanted to do more creative stuff. And I was media buying and I got taken to the best restaurants in the city of Chicago, which was the best part of it. Because they like salespeople like taking buyers out and showing them the
right.
town. But that being said, that was the best part of the job. The rest of it was a lot of hard work. Anyway, I thought I need to look at what I'm doing and what can I do that will give me more satisfaction. Every couple of years, I would get bored with my job and want to try something new. So a friend of mine that I worked with was also a paramedic for the city of Chicago on the side, full-time, but on the side. She did that full-time, and then she was an executive secretary full-time.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing. I didn't have that much energy, but that being said, I realized that I could do the paramedic part and then do whatever I wanted on the side because of the hours. They worked 24 on and 48 off. I started investigating it, and I took a EMT class and fell in love instantly. I felt like I found what I should have been doing all along. And so while I worked full-time, I went to paramedic school and And then my goal was to work for the city as a paramedic. Well, 5 years down the road, I'm getting older. This all started when I was already in my mid-30s. And I kept thinking, did I make a big mistake? I had given up a career that I enjoyed, but to do something completely different. To backtrack a little, I took the firefighter test, which is offered about once every 10 years through the city. And someone had suggested that I take the test as a backup plan in case I get burned out as a paramedic. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm not going to get burned out. I love this job. It's great. It's what I want to do for the rest of my life. But I did it anyway just because I thought it was sage advice. Well, I did well on the exam. And so I ended up having my name on 2 lists. The city of Chicago has 2 departments within a department, but we have a fire operations side, fire suppression operations, and then we have the emergency medical services side. And my name was on both lists. And I kept processing. They process you and process you and process you because thousands of people take this test.
Right.
I did the physical agility, and I was pretty proud of myself because I passed that at, I think I was about 37 or 38 at the time. And I thought, okay, I'm in. Well, I'm still waiting, and I'm still waiting. And then all of a sudden they decide to max out on the age requirement, and they kick you off at 63. And they also were going to make 37 the maximum age to get hired by. Now I was already 39. I'm thinking, oh my Lord,
whoa, okay.
how much of my life doing this? Fortunately, I was grandfathered in and I got into the next class. So on my 41st birthday was my 2nd day in the fire academy. So I made it through the academy as a firefighter medic. And I thought, let's try this. If I don't like it, I could always revert back to not just being a paramedic, but going to the single role as a medic, because I love it. And I ended up getting the best of both worlds. And that was 20 years ago. I have to say 20 years without ever wanting to change jobs is pretty good for me because I didn't get bored. You can never get bored at this job.
So tell us a little bit about what was involved in being a media buyer, and what was, it sounded like, you enjoyed it, but every few years you questioned whether or not it was worth continuing. And then what gave you the courage to finally say, I need a break?
Well, I think it wasn't so much courage as just stubbornness. Media buying was interesting, but once you learned the role, then it was like, okay, now what can I do? So I actually did change. I was in advertising for about 10 years. And I moved up the ladder and I worked on different accounts. And then I ended up, the job I had right before I changed careers completely was for a post-production house that edited TV commercials. And I was their marketing manager, which gave me a little more creative outlet. But even then it was like, it didn't quite, I just felt like it didn't quite suit my personality. Working for the fire department, a lot of people started much earlier, obviously, like in their 20s, and they're the smart ones, but I have a whole wealth of experience, different experience that I brought to the table, which I think is important. But going into the fire department at 41 was a challenge.
So tell us for a minute what that challenge involved, because obviously you were older and you were a woman. That had to be a big obstacle. What did it involve back then? I'm sure, you were a bit of a trailblazer at the time, and maybe you helped pave the way for some women. I mean, I saw, I was going to mention this later, but I know you're a photographer as well. And I saw on your website a whole portfolio of images of female firefighters, including one who is clearly trained as a classical ballerina. And they look like they're under 41. They look like, it looks like there are more of them now. So you started when there was almost no women doing this, and you were older, and that had to be a huge, huge mountain to climb.
I was an athlete my whole life, through high school and college. I competed in pretty much every sport that was available to high schoolers, and I was a track and field shot putter in college. And so I always knew that I was very physically strong. There's definitely that subculture of women shouldn't be on the job that I've experienced, but I choose to ignore that because I just spent 20 years doing the job. And I'm proud of what I did and was able to accomplish. If you focus on the negative comments that you'll hear, said under their breath, it'll destroy you. So I always chose to focus on the people that wanted to mentor me, that wanted to see me succeed.
So Kat, I live in an apartment in New York City, and I can tell you that we don't go out very often for walks, but when we do, how should I put it? I find it hard to socially distance in an elevator if other people are going to come in, people who are not part of your pod, your family. So what I try and do, because I've gained a few pounds, more than a few pounds in the last few years, particularly if I'm pushing the double stroller with my kids, is I basically try to communicate that it would be really hard for anybody to squeeze in addition to my tush. Unfortunately, most of my neighbors also want to take a solo ride down. It's only a 60-second ride down, max. It's a reasonable size elevator. My son is in love with fire trucks, or as he would say, fire truck. And he's actually gone to sit in one once.
Oh, good.
They didn't look so spacious. And I imagine that when you go out on a call, it's longer than a 60-second ride. So what do you and your colleagues do right now in the age of coronavirus to protect yourselves?
What we do now is we wear masks, and we wear them in the compartment, which you're right, is pretty small. Use proper hygiene. We wash our hands a lot, which we did pre-coronavirus. We wear masks, and if we're going on an EMS run, the EMTs that are with me will dress up, the lieutenant and the EMTs will dress up in personal protective gear to protect themselves. And I mean, they literally have face shields and goggles and masks, gowns, and it's crazy the amount of clothing and protective gear that we have now versus what we had a year ago.
My last question, speaking of your driving skills and, driving these big trucks, bigger in real life than this. I assume that you could drive anything, right? You could drive the cement mixers that we used to see across the way as they were building the building that's going to block our neighbor's view. The really tricked out RVs and motorhomes that celebrities have. I hear Will Smith has a 2-story one. It looks like, a yacht on wheels. Not that I've ever experienced a yacht either. But my thought was always like, it would be really nice to stay in one of these things in a parking lot that was open to the public or a person's driveway. But how do you actually drive them anywhere? You could actually drive one of these things, right?
Well, I can drive pretty much anything except, a semi.
The last thing I want to mention for our viewers is that you're just about to come out with a book. It hasn't been released yet. I think you're working through the final set of revisions, but I think I can see the cover behind you, over your shoulder, and I think it's Chicago Strong, right?
Chicago Strong, the real women of Chicago Fire.
And tell me a little bit about what kind of strength you're emphasizing there.
Well, the whole thing was what I wanted to do was recognize the women on the job, the paramedics and the firefighters, which I have the luxury of being one of each. I kind of straddle both sides. Even though I'm on the fire suppression side, I'm also a paramedic. So I just wanted them to be recognized for the strengths that they bring to the table for this job, because it is male dominated. And I don't think they do get enough recognition. And so the strong part came about because I already knew I was strong physically when I came on this job, but it was always in question because they would always compare me to men. But right. It's like, I'm not a man, but I'm still strong. So I wanted to reframe and expand on what strong meant. But I wanted it to be a source of inspiration for girls and other women to pursue careers that they wouldn't normally think of, like firefighting and or EMS, which had I seen a book like this when I was 15 years old, my career, would have been completely different. So it was centered around the different types of strengths there are. And there's emotional strength, compassion and empathy. And then there's, mental strength, which is fortitude and determination. But I wanted to show that you don't have to just be physically strong. That's important, and we have that, but there's more to being strong.
I can't wait to read it.
It will go public on Facebook and Instagram.
Thank you so, so much.